since believed that the ability to be surprised had abandoned me. At 38, with a degree in biology and more than a decade of fieldwork with the U.S. Forest Service, I had seen enough to strip all romance from my profession. The natural world, once an endless tapestry of mysteries when I was a fresh-faced graduate, had gradually become little more than a ledger of data points. Migration routes tracked by GPS, population density reports compiled in spreadsheets, DNA analysis drawn from tufts of fur or scat samples sealed in sterile bags. My focus was large predators, the apex denizens of the damp, towering expanse of Olympic National Forest in Washington, a realm where black bears, cougars, and the occasional wolf demanded vigilance and respect. My job was to render them predictable, to translate wildness into measurable patterns. Over the years, I trained myself to rationalize the strange. The unknown almost always boiled down to human error, the exaggerations of tourists, or the deceptive play of shadow and light beneath the moss-heavy canopy. Olympic National Forest was my kingdom, though a gloomy one, a land that had never fully yielded to human presence. It was an ancient rainforest where colossal Sitka spruces and Douglas firs locked their branches overhead, forming a dome so dense that sunlight filtered down only in dim, green shafts, as if through cathedral glass. Everything wore a layer of moss, tree trunks, fallen logs, jagged stones. Even the soil itself seemed draped in a carpet of velvet decay. The air was perpetually damp, heavy with the scent of rotting leaves, fungal growth, and wet earth, a smell that clung to my clothes and hair long after I left the woods. Silence in these woods was never comforting. It pressed in on me, heavy and watchful, broken only by the occasional drip of water or the distant cry of a raven. To outsiders, it was just wilderness. To me, it was something older, almost sentient. Sometimes, wandering alone beneath the dripping canopy, I could swear the forest regarded me with suspicion. It wasn't merely ancient, it was hostile, guarding secrets in its fog-choked valleys, secrets that didn't want to be uncovered, secrets that seemed to breathe just out of reach. This season, my partner was Maya Jimenez. She was 25, and in her eyes still burned that fire of idealism that had long since died in me. A seasonal ranger, she'd grown up here and knew the forest not from maps, but from intuition. Maya could read footprints the way I read scientific reports, and she revered the folklore of the local tribes, the Quilutas and Ho. To her, the forest was alive, full of spirits and legends. To me, it was a complex ecosystem that demanded constant monitoring. Our assignment should have been routine, a 3-day patrol deep into the park, checking camera traps and following up on complaints from a farmer on the outskirts of the reserve. Someone had been stealing his sheep, and the man insisted it wasn't a cougar or a bear, but a huge, hairy creature on 2 legs. I'd heard stories like this countless times. Over the years, hairy creatures almost always turned out to be either unusually large black bears, or the product of imagination fueled by too much cheap whiskey. I had trained myself to roll my eyes, to dismiss such tales before they could ignite curiosity, and to focus on what mattered. Tracks, droppings, camera trap data, measurable reality. Talking about Chiatko, Maya said softly, her voice carrying over the crackle of our campfire as we set up for the night. She stirred the coals, sending sparks dancing into the damp darkness. Her eyes caught the orange light, wide and earnest. I shook my head, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. She's talking about Bigfoot, Maya, I corrected gently. And we both know Bigfoot is a convenient story. It draws tourists, sells t-shirts, spins tales no one can ever verify. Our job is simple. Find traces of a cougar or a bear, file the report, and calm the man down. I poked at the coals, listening to the hiss of moisture in the logs, the only sound breaking the thick silence of the forest around us. Maya didn't flinch. She gazed toward the dark line of trees beyond the firelight. "What if he's right?" she said quietly, her tone serious, almost reverent. "My grandmother used to say there are places you can't go, places where the owner of the forest lives. He's not evil, Eris. He's just another, and he doesn't like to be disturbed." I chuckled softly, though the sound carried a note of condescension. "Your grandmother told wonderful stories," I said. "I love them, really. But I believe in data, Maya. Facts. Measurable, observable reality. Tomorrow we'll find the facts, and that will be the end of it." I didn't know then that the facts waiting for us would be far stranger, far more terrifying than any legend passed down through generations. The forest held its secrets tightly, secrets older than memory, older than maps, older than any human attempt to classify or understand them. The next day, our patrol carried us deeper into the heart of Olympic National Forest. The trees grew taller, their trunks wider, the canopy so thick that only dappled green light reached the forest floor. Moss dripped from every branch, and the air was heavy with moisture, pungent with the scent of decaying leaves and wet soil. The ground underfoot was slick, roots twisted like giant serpents, and every sound, drip, snap, rustle, seemed unnaturally amplified in the stillness. By mid-afternoon, we reached the farthest point of our route, the Wasp Nest Research Station. It was little more than a metal mast supporting weather equipment and a handful of cameras recording animal movements across the canyon slopes. The station perched precariously on the edge of a steep ravine, a place even the most determined tourist rarely dared to tread. The canyon walls dropped sharply, shrouded in mist, and the roar of a distant waterfall echoed faintly up the slopes. Standing there, I felt the vulnerability of anyone, or anything, caught unprepared in this isolation. I paused, scanning the ridgelines with binoculars. Tracks marred the soft soil, but nothing seemed unusual at first glance. Still, I couldn't shake the subtle sense of being watched, a prickling at the back of my neck that nagged at me despite years of experience in the field. A few meters ahead, Maya moved with effortless confidence, noting faint disturbances in the moss, displaced stones, subtle depressions that marked the passage of a large animal. Her eyes caught details I would have walked past without a second thought. "That's not a bear," Maya whispered, pointing to a deep, elongated track partially hidden beneath fallen leaves. "Too big, too upright." I frowned, lowering the binoculars. The track was enormous, easily twice the size of a black bear's paw, and the stride between prints was longer than any cougar could manage in a single leap. My mind raced, hunting for a rational explanation. Maybe it was a misprint in the soil, erosion exaggerating a bear track. Maybe some hunter had played a crude joke. But the detail, the claw marks, the weight of the impression, the spacing, was too precise, too deliberate. I forced myself to take notes, to maintain the detachment of science. "We'll document it, but keep calm," I murmured to Maya, though I could feel a tightening in my chest, a tension I hadn't felt in years of fieldwork. The forest seemed to lean closer, mist curling around our boots, silence pressing in on all sides. Somewhere in that stillness I knew the truth waited, and for the first time I worried it might not be the kind of truth I, or anyone, could reduce to charts, statistics, or reports. As we set up our temporary camp for the night, I couldn't shake the unease. The canyon wall seemed to watch us, the trees whispering secrets to each other in the wind. I tried to cling to logic, tried to convince myself that there was a natural explanation, but deep down I felt we had crossed the edge of the known world and stepped into something older, something far more alive than any legend could capture. It was here that our first real surprise awaited us. One of the cameras, enclosed in a sturdy steel box to protect it from bears, had been torn from its mount. The steel body wasn't just opened, it was crumpled and mangled, twisted like a tin can. "A grizzly bear?" I said automatically, examining the damage. But there hadn't been grizzlies here for nearly a century. Even the largest black bears didn't possess this kind of strength. "Look," Maya called, pointing to the ground at the base of the mast. I knelt and my heart skipped. Footprints were pressed into the rain-soaked soil. These were not bear tracks, and not human either. The print was enormous, about 45 centimeters long, a wide heel, 5 distinct toes. Whoever, or whatever, was barefoot. The most startling detail, it wasn't a flat foot like a bear's. There was a pronounced arch, like a human foot built to cushion weight while walking bipedally. "Someone's having fun," I muttered, though my voice lacked its usual confidence. I started scanning the surrounding soil for other tracks, expecting to find shoe prints, a joker hiding in the woods, but there were none. Just these giant footprints, leading from the thicket to the mast and back. "No claws," Maya observed. "A bear always leaves claw marks. And look at the depth, the weight. It must be at least 300 kilograms. I grabbed my measuring tape, pacing off the stride, almost 2.5 meters between steps. I photographed everything from every angle. The data didn't add up. The facts were screaming something impossible. My mind raced, hunting for a rational explanation. An unknown hermit with enormous feet? Some elaborate prank? But who, and why, would venture this deep into the wilderness to fool 2 Forest Service employees? "The memory card is missing," I said, examining the mangled remains of the camera. Whoever did this didn't want to leave any pictures. "Or whatever did this," Maya corrected, her gaze fixed in the direction the tracks disappeared, deep into an unexplored, overgrown canyon. "We have to go after it." "No," I snapped. "It's stupid and dangerous. We don't know what it is. Our instructions are to return and report any unexplained situation." "And what will we report? That Bigfoot stole our memory card?" she said, her voice sharp. "We'd be sent for psychiatric evaluation. Eris, this is our chance to see, to find the truth." In her eyes, I saw not just curiosity, but something more, an almost religious awe. And to my horror, I realized my own scientific skepticism was cracking. I'm a biologist. I've discovered new insect species, cataloged creatures no one else has seen. But this could overturn everything we think we know about the natural world. Against all rules, against all common sense, I nodded. We followed the trail. It led us down into the canyon, where no map ventured. The forest grew thicker and darker with every step. We waded through ferns taller than a man, climbed over moss-draped trunks of fallen giants. A strange, unfamiliar smell thickened the air, sharp, musky, like wet dogs mixed with the ozone after a thunderstorm. After an hour, we came across another sign. In a small clearing, 4 meters up in the fork of an old cedar, lay the carcass of a deer. A cougar could drag prey up a tree, but not that high. And the neck, it wasn't bitten as a predator would. It was twisted. Then we began to notice strange constructions made of branches. Sticks were thrust into the ground and intertwined with grass, forming patterns, symbols, or markers. Nothing here seemed random. Someone, or something, had a plan. Fear began to creep up on me. Not the fear of a wild animal, but something far more unsettling. The fear of an unknown mind. We had been walking for hours when a sound reached us from the depths of the canyon, rising above the wind in the canopy. It wasn't a roar, or the cry of any animal I had ever known. It was a series of deep, resonant exclamations, like the mournful notes of a massive wind instrument. There was a strange, haunting melody in them, full of pain and longing. The sound reverberated off the canyon walls, and it seemed to come from everywhere at once. I froze, hand hovering near my holster. Maya stopped beside me, pale, yet her eyes burned with something fierce. "He's hurt," she whispered. "He's calling for help, or warning us to get out," I said, though we both knew we would go further. The sound led us to a ravine, where a waterfall thundered down 20 meters, smashing into the black stones below. Mist hung thick in the air, soaking us within seconds. And there, on a small ledge at the foot of the waterfall, we saw him. The legend was alive. He was enormous. Even sitting, leaning against a rock, he towered over me. Thick, matted fur, dark brown, almost black, covered his entire body. His powerful arms lay limply on the stones, and his head, massive, sloped sharply with a heavy jaw. But the face was impossibly expressive. Deep-set eyes stared into the foaming water. There was nothing bestial there, only exhaustion, suffering that seemed endless. His right leg was mangled, trapped in a large steel bear trap, a modern one, its teeth sunk deep into his shin, anchored to a heavy log. He had obviously tried to drag the contraption, battered it along the ground until he could barely move. The bone beneath the steel jaws was shattered. The wound was horrifying, blood mixing with mud and water, and yet he had not made a sound beyond that low, mournful melody. At that moment, all my skepticism evaporated like morning mist. This was not a monster from legend, not some missing link. In front of me sat a sentient being, caught in trouble because of a human. And I, a biologist who had spent my life protecting wildlife, felt my share of responsibility pressing down on me. "Oh my God," Maya gasped, her voice trembling with both horror and awe. The creature slowly turned its massive head toward us, the great curve of its skull outlined against the canyon mist. Its dark, deep eyes locked onto mine, every muscle in its enormous body tensed, thick sinews coiling like springs beneath the fur. From its broad chest came a low, vibrating rumble that resonated through the rocks beneath our boots. It wasn't a roar of rage, nor the challenge of a predator. It was a sound born of exhaustion, fear, and pain. A warning, primal and clear, yet not hostile. My chest tightened, a strange mixture of awe and dread washing over me, and yet, against all instinct, a fierce determination stirred within. "We have to help him," I said, the words catching even me by surprise. Firm, resolute, as if I were declaring a law I hadn't known I could enforce. Maya's eyes widened, her voice trembling. But how? He could kill us with one move, one sweep of that arm, one kick. It would be over. I shook my head slowly, my mind racing through risks and possibilities. And if we do nothing, he will die. Blood loss, infection, exposure. We have no choice. I saw the weight of the decision mirrored in her face, the hesitation that nearly froze her, but I also saw the courage beneath it. The same courage that had drawn her into these forests year after year, into places where few dared to tread. We began our careful descent down the slippery slope, each step deliberate, every movement slow and visible. Wet rocks threatened to betray us with a single misstep, the sound of our boots muted only by the constant rush of water over stones. I removed my backpack, letting it fall to the ground so it wouldn't seem threatening. I pulled out a tire iron, not as a weapon but for leverage if we needed it, and a large first aid kit. My hand stayed fully in view, extended slightly, a silent signal that we meant no harm. "We won't hurt you," I said, voice calm, even, flat, the same tone I had used countless times approaching injured bears, cougars, or wolves. "We want to help." The words were both command and plea, spoken with the authority of someone who understood danger and had learned the patience of the wild. The creature's massive frame shifted, tracking our every move. Its breathing was heavy, ragged, each exhale trembling through its chest like a small quake. When we closed to within 10 meters, it growled, a low, guttural sound that revealed large, yellow teeth like jagged stones. But it did not lunge. It did not strike. It watched, measured, evaluated us with an intelligence that seemed to peer far beyond the human. Then Maya did something that would have made my heart pound if I had considered it myself. She crouched, lowering herself to the ground in a posture of vulnerability. Her hands rested lightly on her knees, palms open and visible. She spoke softly, not in English, not in any language meant for everyday conversation, but in one of the local dialects her grandmother had taught her. The cadence was gentle, almost melodic, each syllable carrying a reverence older than memory, a song of respect for the spirits of the forest and the beings that dwelled within it. The words seemed to hum in harmony with the damp, moss-heavy air, weaving between the rocks and the mist. And then, incredibly, the creature's rumbling chest stilled. Its eyes shifted to the side, a flicker of curiosity creeping into the depthless darkness of its gaze. The tension that had gripped the canyon dissipated like mist in sunlight. Its massive head lowered slightly, tilting as though listening, pondering, weighing us not as prey, but as entities capable of understanding. The raw, primal fear radiating from it faded into a cautious calm. A shiver ran down my spine. This was our moment. Every second of our approach had been calculated, measured, fraught with peril, and yet now it felt as if the universe itself had granted us a fragile, fleeting opportunity. I could almost feel the pulse of the forest tightening around us, the leaves and stones holding their breath. His eyes didn't blink, but they softened, a trace of recognition, or at least acknowledgement, passing between human and impossibly vast being. Maya's song continued, her voice steady now, each word a bridge across the chasm of species, experience, and fear. I mirrored her calm, kneeling slightly to bring our heights closer, moving with slow, deliberate care. The creature shifted, and for the first time its posture relaxed, though it remained monumental, coiled with latent strength. One misstep could still bring catastrophe, yet for the first time, we were not just intruders. We were participants in something rare, something extraordinary, a moment of mutual understanding. Fragile but undeniable. I glanced at Maya. Her eyes were wide, but they glowed with a strange elation. The bond we were forming in that instant would shape the rest of our lives. This was our chance, not to conquer, not to dominate, but to act as stewards, guardians of a being that had walked these forests long before humans had named them. The silence of the canyon seemed to thrum with potential, a sacred rhythm connecting human and giant, mortal and myth. And with that, the creature moved, slowly, deliberately, not with aggression, but with trust. Each motion seemed to test us as we had tested it. I knew the next steps would be delicate. One wrong move could undo everything. Yet, I also knew that if we succeeded, if we truly reached the fragile understanding blooming here in the mist, we would not just save a life. We would become part of something far larger, a living secret that demanded vigilance, respect, and unwavering courage. The rescue was the most stressful, dangerous operation of my life. I crouched beside the trap. The air reeked of blood, wet fur, and that sharp, metallic ozone. I could see the muscles rolling like steel beneath the creature's thick hide. Any wrong move could be my last. Maya, talk to him. Don't stop, I said. She continued her quiet song, words flowing over the rushing water. I wedged the end of the tire iron between the trap levers and pressed down with all my weight. The rusty metal refused to budge. I don't have enough strength, I croaked, my voice hoarse. The creature watched, its dark eyes assessing me. Then slowly, it extended its massive left hand. I froze, expecting a blow, but it didn't strike. Instead, its enormous palm rested on the tire iron, just beside my hands. I felt the sheer force, incredible yet careful, controlled. Together we pressed. There was a deafening creak, and the jaws of the trap began to part. The moment the pressure eased, the creature let out a long, painful howl that was instantly swallowed by the roar of the waterfall, but it didn't release the tire iron. Finally, with a loud click, the trap opened. I threw the tire iron aside. Its leg was free, but the sight made my stomach twist. The bone jutted through torn flesh, disinfection and a splint. Quickly, I commanded, voice tight with urgency. I knelt down and opened the first aid kit. The creature flinched, jerking his foot back as I reached for it. Easy, easy, I said softly, lifting my hands in a placating gesture. This will hurt, but it's necessary. Without it, you won't make it. I locked eyes with it, trying to convey my intent without speaking further. Gradually, it extended its leg again, shaking, but willing to endure. I emptied the bottle of antiseptic over the wound. The creature let out a guttural roar, arching its massive body, but stayed put. Then I did what had to be done. I reset the bone. Its piercing cry was swallowed by the roar of the waterfall, but still it did not pull away. Working quickly, efficiently, I wrapped a tight bandage. With Maya's help, we attached 2 sturdy branches, fashioning a primitive splint. All the while, I was in contact with it. I could feel the hardness of its fur, the heat of its skin, the incredible power in the muscles beneath. I could feel the raw, pent-up pain radiating from it. When it was done, we stepped back, giving it space. The giant sat panting, massive chest heaving, eyes fixed on the bandaged leg. Slowly, it lifted its gaze to meet ours, and in that look, I felt a jolt that shook me to my core. This wasn't mere gratitude or acknowledgement. It was something deeper, a conscious recognition, almost human in its intensity, a silent communication of understanding and trust. Leaning heavily on a jagged rock, the giant began to rise, each movement deliberate, filled with effort. Only now, in full view, did I grasp his true scale. Nearly 3 meters of raw power, a body sculpted by the wilderness, a presence that combined terrifying strength with an almost regal primal grace. He paused, balancing carefully on his uninjured leg, then slowly lifted his enormous hand, palm outstretched toward us. It was not a farewell, not a warning. It was something else entirely, a gesture of recognition, of equality, a silent, wordless declaration. We were seen, we were acknowledged. And in that moment, I knew I had glimpsed a mind that was both alien and astonishingly kind. Then, limping heavily, he turned and disappeared into a shady crevice behind the waterfall, a passage we hadn't even known existed. Eventually, we found his cave. The entrance was cleverly concealed behind the cascading water, as if the forest itself were guarding it. Inside, the air was surprisingly dry, carrying a faint, lingering scent of old campfire smoke. A primitive bed of moss and fir branches lay against the wall. In a shadowed corner, several worked stones, like scrapers, rested neatly beside folded bundles of strange plants. It was more than a shelter. It was a dwelling, a house, a place lived in with care. We didn't linger. It felt like an invasion of an alien world. Before leaving, I found an abandoned trap and, using the tire iron and some stones, broke its mechanism. I didn't want anyone else to get hurt. The way back was silent. My world had turned upside down. The data I had always trusted, the numbers and patterns, were only a tiny part of a vast, unknown reality. The legends weren't just stories. They were true. In the quiet of the evening at camp, after the last embers of the fire had dimmed and the forest seemed to hold its breath, we made a decision. We will destroy the photos of the footprints, I said, my voice low, almost a whisper, as if the trees themselves might overhear. In the report, we'll write that the camera was damaged by a bear and the memory card destroyed by water. As for the first aid kit, let's say I fell and sprained my ankle. Nobody, absolutely nobody, must ever find out. Maya nodded slowly, eyes glistening in the flickering firelight. The tears on her cheeks weren't born of fear or sadness, but of understanding, of the weight of the responsibility we now shared. She swallowed hard, then spoke, her voice steady despite the tremor in her throat. "We will be his guardians," she said. "Of him, and of everything that lives in these canyons. We'll keep the silence safe no matter what it costs us." We looked at each other, bound by a pact that went beyond duty or law. In that moment, the forest seemed to settle, the night holding its breath in approval, or perhaps in warning. From that day on, we were no longer merely observers of the wild. We were its stewards, keeper of a secret too vast and too dangerous to be known. I am no longer just a biologist. Years of tracking, cataloging, and studying the wilderness have made me something more, a keeper of a secret few could even imagine. Sometimes, when I sit hunched over maps in the dim light of my cabin, tracing contour lines and river bends, my eyes linger on the white patches of unexplored canyons deep in Olympic National Forest. To anyone else, they are simply areas yet to be surveyed, gaps in topography. To me, they are something far more intimate, almost sacred. I see a house there, not built of wood or stone, but existing in some other impossible sense. The house of the quiet giant who once looked into my eyes and changed the course of my life forever. The memory is vivid, haunting, and it has reshaped my purpose. I understand now that my task is no longer merely to study, catalog, or make sense of the forest. My duty is heavier, greater, to protect the silence, the untouched corners, the things that should remain unseen, and to ensure that the forest keeps its secrets, as it always has.